And welcome back. Anita in San Antonio, Texas, watching Free Speech TV on DirecTV. You are on the air with me and Michael Eric Dyson.
Hi.
Hey, Anita.
Professor Dyson, how much do you think racism had to do with the election of Donald Trump? And also, I'd just like to say that for the past 50 years, white people have been the majority of white people have been voting against their own self-interest. And now that same white majority is whining that things are so tough for them. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand why, because we are a growing coalition, the Democratic Party, the minorities and immigrants and that, but the white working class is actually dying off. That voter.
So your question is, to what extent did racism play a role in Trump's election?
Right.
Okay.
Well, there's no question that part of the driving force behind the election of Donald Trump had everything to do with the perception that regardless of his distance, almost clinically from the white working class, he did embody some of the sense of resentment, the sense of lost opportunity, the sense that we're not being taken seriously. And yeah, when you're told that you have to share your toys in the sandlot of life, in the sandbox of life, it makes you upset. You get mad. I think part of the problem was that Barack Obama didn't have enough strength and didn't have enough vision and didn't have enough cojones to tell more of the truth. Now, I didn't think he could tell all of the truth to white America. We're not stupid over here. But it is true that Obama drew false equivalencies between black anger in the 1960s and white anger now. Well, white anger now has a lot to do with the fact that white people now have to share some of the resources they got unfairly in the 60s. And they're mad that they have to share it. That's not a legitimate anger, Mr. Obama. And so his failure, I think, to articulate that in a reasonable and morally compelling fashion led to the belief among many white people that they're mad at Obama and mad at other black people who are trying to hook black people up. So Obama's end didn't work out. His end game was rather, I think, problematic. So yeah, I think a lot of white people were upset with Obama, got mad at him, and voted for Donald Trump. That's not the only thing. There are legitimate class interests there. You're right. People vote against their own self-interest. White brothers and sisters voting for Donald Trump doesn't make much sense to many people who know that he's going to get a bunch of billionaires in his cabinet. He's going to, do policies and enact policies that will not help working class white people, and that they will be in the same boat as vulnerable African American and Latino people. But I think what we have to do is to say to white brothers and sisters, hey, just because this guy is selling you a bill of good of white vengeance, that white vengeance may cost you economically. It gives you a good feeling emotionally. But, what W.E. Du Bois talked about in his book, Black Reconstruction, as the psychic wages of whiteness. White people are sold the bill of goods. Hey, at least you're not a Negro. At least you're not the underling. At least you're not the worst dregs of society. And as a result of that, you are part of a white race that is superior. Yes, you may be suffering now and today, but economically, but you are still superior morally and mentally and spiritually. That will no longer sell. That no longer works. It does for many white brothers and sisters who are unconscious of the appeal made to them. But I think once we begin to put it in the open, like that story I told about Martin Luther King Jr., that white folk who are working class have much more in common with black, brown, red, and yellow people who are working class as well. Notice that at the same time that America said, through both the Democratic and Republican Party, let's get beyond identity politics, they said this was the resurgence of the white working class. Get the contradiction? You didn't say working class, you said white working class. So now the very notion of identity is reinscribed in the very distancing you want to have between politics and identity politics. It doesn't work, but whiteness is seen as universal, whiteness is seen as therefore neutral, and we don't get a chance to ask questions of it. That's what I'm trying to do in this book, is to get white folk to ask questions so they can see you may have more in common with the people who are black and brown than you have in common with the people who are white and brown.
There you go. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Michael Eric Dyson with us. Our last block here, and boy, we still have a whole bunch of calls for you. Ivory in Oroville, California.
I got to stick around. I got to stay on longer than an hour. I got to take over your show.
I got to debate a gun guy at the top of the hour. Sorry, but you want to come back sometime? We can do 3 hours.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
I would do it.
All right.
Ivory in Oroville, California. You are on the air.
Hello, Michael. I'm a big fan, and I'll be at the Amend conference in L.A. Tomorrow.
All right.
And I just wanted to talk about the other day I went out and I'm looking for an apartment. I'm a college student here in at Butte College, And when I was talking on the phone with the person who I was supposed to get the place from and stuff, he sounded really nice and stuff, and pretty much gave me all the information that I needed to go and get the place. And then when I got there, and he saw me and my brothers, because me and my brothers were moving in together, he instantly switched up and started talking about credit checks and stuff like that, and it kind of affects you, you know, and so, like, it's kind of like a domino effect. When it happens to a lot of people, it pretty much, like, leaves you in a bad situation, and then that's like a domino effect that goes on. And I feel like that a lot of people fail to understand that and see that these things affect you in your life, and it moves on, you know, and it's like a domino effect. And I just wanted to hear your thought on that.
Yeah, the domino effect of one thing happening and then another thing happening, and then, you know, and they call these microaggressions, these little small infractions, offenses, small to who. They're normal, they're ritual, they're routine, they're daily, but they have a deleterious effect. They have a real negative effect. And when in accumulation, and when they're accumulated, they have a tremendously negative effect. And whether it's about housing, whether it's about retail stores, whether it's about being called a different name, whether it's about you getting mixed up with somebody else. I mean, there are all kinds of ways in which the ordinary processes of existence, whether in the housing front, whether in employment, whether engaging police people and the like, can have a awfully tough consequence for people of color in ways that white brothers and sisters don't get, don't understand, don't believe. I mean, Obama spent a lot of his time in office by saying, hey, you know, we're not making this up. I mean, he says, you know, black people are not making this up, because there's literally the belief that this is so irrational and so far from my experience that I can't even imagine that this could be real. And I think the caller is helping us understand that, yep, it is real, but the price that people of color pay, higher blood pressure, greater depression, constantly fighting against a system that doesn't seem to be sensitive to you, that can have a horrible impact on your health and on your life.
Yeah, tragically.
Mm-hmm.
Susan in Dallas, Texas. Hey, Susan, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Dr. Dyson, I'm in the middle of your book, and I thank you so much for it.
Thank you.
I'm a white lady. I go to a nearly all-white church in downtown Dallas, and I have been attempting to teach groups of people in my church for several years about whiteness and about all of the issues you're speaking of. And I wanted to ask you about reaction that I've gotten that at first surprised me from the more left-leaning, white, liberal, well-educated, sophisticated people. They seem to have more problems talking about white privilege than people who are not so left-leaning. And they have, if I read from Where Do We Go From Here, where Dr. King has some pretty harsh words for the white liberal religious folk, that's harder for the left-leaning people to hear. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that that perspective or that reality.
Yes, ma'am. No, it's a very powerful and poignant observation. I was just in Dallas this past Sunday preaching at Friendship West Baptist Church for a couple of services. So I was right there in your neck of the woods. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to meet you there, and thank you for reading my book. You're raising a very important point. And many white brothers and sisters, you know, can point to Donald Trump and go, oh, my God, I could never be that guy. He's horrible. He's a racist. He's a xenophobe. He's a sexist, and so on and so forth. I'm so much better than that. And then you think, well, how did Donald Trump get created? Remember, Frankenstein is the name of the doctor, not the monster. So the doctor creates the horrible creation that then bites back, destroys its very creator. And I think whiteness in that way operates, and whiteness that created Donald Trump, that created who he is, that created his worldview, his mindset, his outlook, his perspective. We don't often acknowledge that there's a relationship between John Boehner and Mitch McConnell and Eric Cantor and those figures within the Republican Party, Newt Gingrich and a Donald Trump. The constant erosion of, the beliefs about poor people of color or black people, the belief that they are somehow trying to own the dole, trying to take advantage of American society. So that stuff feeds that. And many more progressive, informed, liberal white people, as Dr. King said, may be more of a hindrance, he said, than the outright Ku Klux Klaner, because the outright Ku Klux Klaner says, I hate you, this is why, I don't even want to deal with you. He said some liberal whites thought that they were more informed than they were, and as a result of that, got more resentful. How dare you? I've been your friend. You're not grateful. What are you talking about? Allow me to show you all the things that I've done to sacrifice for you. I am hurt. Now you got white vulnerability. Now you got white fragility. Now you've got white hurt feelings. Now you've got white tears crying. And so it drowns out the tears of black people whose hurt and pain they've endured. Think about Renato Rosaldo, the anthropologist, who had a concept called imperialist nostalgia. He says a culture destroys another culture and then weeps with it over its destruction, as if it doesn't know it was the reason for the destruction of the culture. Now there is empathy that is portrayed, but that empathy is inauthentic, because if you were truly empathetic, you wouldn't have destroyed my culture in the first place. That's akin to what goes on in many white liberal circles, where some white brothers and sisters may not be as conscious of their complicity in the very problems that they seek to oppose.
And then we see this reflected in Hollywood in the white savior complex that makes it into
Kevin Costner's in every film. I love him, but man, that dude has saved more black people than the NAACP.
It's a remarkable time, and it's a remarkable challenge we have. The book is Tears We Cannot Stop, A Sermon to White America. The author is Michael Eric Dyson. Toni Morrison says, elegantly written, a work to relish. Stephen King, here's a sermon that's as fierce as it is lucid. It shook me up, but in a good way. This is an absolutely brilliant book. You have to get it. Tears We Cannot Stop. Professor Michael Eric Dyson, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. You're a great man. Thank you, sir.
Great having you with us. We will be back in just a few minutes.